Good evening. I'm David Muir. Tonight on CG News, we take you inside the Oval Office for a closer and more revealing look at President Donald Trump, just days after taking the oath of office, at a moment when the power of the presidency is settling in and the world is watching closely. Only 5 days into his presidency, Donald Trump is already moving at a rapid pace. Executive orders signed, campaign promises turned into policy, and a clear message sent, not just to Washington, but to allies and adversaries around the globe. One of the president's first and most defining actions, an executive order directing the federal government to begin construction of a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. President Trump says construction will begin as soon as it is physically possible, and he insists, repeatedly, that Mexico will ultimately pay for it through negotiations that his administration says will soon begin. For supporters, it is a promise kept. For critics, it is a flashpoint in a deeply divided national debate. Immigration, of course, remains at the center of this presidency. President Trump addressed the future of undocumented immigrants who were brought to the United States as children, often referred to as dreamers. Millions of young people and families are watching closely, uncertain about what comes next. The president says they should not be very worried. He acknowledges they are in the country illegally, but also says his administration will show compassion toward those who have lived productive lives. A formal policy, he says, will be announced within weeks. For now, the uncertainty remains, and so does the anxiety. But perhaps the most controversial issue raised so far involves the very foundation of American democracy. President Trump has repeated his claim that millions of illegal votes were cast in the 2016 election. Enough, he says, to cost him the popular vote. He has promised a full investigation, citing concerns about voter registration, duplicate registrations, and ballots cast by individuals who should not have been eligible to vote. Election officials, independent researchers, and past investigations have found no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Still, the president insists the issue is real and serious. At stake is public confidence in the electoral system itself. National security was another major focus of our conversation. President Trump spoke candidly about interrogation practices, including waterboarding. He said he personally believes such methods work, citing conversations with intelligence officials who argue they can produce results. At the same time, the president emphasized that he will rely on the judgment of his top national security advisors, Defense Secretary James Mattis and CIA Director Mike Pompeo. Both men have expressed opposition to torture. The president says any decision will be made within the bounds of the law, but his comments signal a sharp departure from the policies of the previous administration. We also discussed the immense responsibility that comes with the office, particularly the moment shortly after the oath of office, when the president is briefed on the nuclear codes. President Trump described it as a deeply sobering experience. Very scary, he said, a reminder of the extraordinary power now resting on his shoulders and the consequences of every decision. So what keeps a new president awake at night? President Trump says it's not just terrorism or homeland security, it's the economy. He spoke about years of lost jobs, factories closing, and trade deals that he believes failed American workers. He says previous administrations allowed opportunity to slip away. He points to the voters he calls the forgotten men and women of America, people who, he says, were ignored for decades and finally made their voices heard. Those voters, he says, are forgotten no more. This is a presidency that is bold, confrontational, and unapologetically disruptive. Supporters see strength and decisiveness. Critics see risk and division. What is undeniable is this: the Trump presidency is moving fast, and its impact will be felt far beyond these first days. For CG News, I'm David Muir. The Supreme Court has just triggered a judicial shockwave so immense that it has effectively destabilized the ground beneath Donald Trump, sending the former president and his entire legal team into a state of total paralysis. We are witnessing a historic turning point that almost no one anticipated, and the implications for the Trump camp are nothing short of alarming. Before we break down the mechanics of this legal strike and explain why reports indicate Trump is descending into panic, take a brief moment to click the subscribe button, enable notifications, and press the like button on this video. If you are seeking the unfiltered truth about these courtroom confrontations, including details the mainstream media frequently glosses over, you are in the right place. Join our rapidly expanding community now so you do not miss a single update as this extraordinary 72-hour countdown begins. Now, let us analyze the structure of this catastrophic ruling. In a decision that legal historians and constitutional scholars are already describing as unprecedented in American legal history, the Supreme Court has ordered that Donald Trump must immediately, without hesitation or delay, surrender financial records, internal business communications, and sensitive documents that even his own attorneys did not realize were under scrutiny. This was not a routine denial of a secondary petition or procedural dismissal. This was the highest court in the nation tearing away a veil to expose something hidden. A sealed grand jury investigation has been operating in secrecy, running parallel to every known prosecution for more than a year. Trump is now legally compelled by the Supreme Court to hand over evidence that could reveal an entirely new and previously concealed layer of criminal exposure. It is difficult to fully comprehend that the Supreme Court managed to keep a proceeding of such magnitude completely secret for months. We are talking about a clandestine legal conflict conducted in the shadows, a hidden battle that even Trump's lead defense attorneys were reportedly unaware of until the gavel finally fell. The justices released this decision without any advanced warning. There were no televised oral arguments. There were no media briefings or press statements. There was no opportunity for Trump's public relations apparatus to shape the narrative, nor for his legal team to prepare a counterstatement. One moment, Donald Trump believed he had a complete map of the legal dangers surrounding him. He thought he had identified every threat. The next moment, the ground collapsed beneath him, and he plunged into a legal void he did not even know existed. This is not merely about adding another case to his growing list of legal troubles. The Supreme Court has disclosed that a covert investigation has been active the entire time, involving evidence so sensitive, so potentially damaging, or so critical to national security that even the existence of the subpoena had to remain classified. The consequences of this sudden revelation are set to fundamentally alter everything we believed about Trump's legal exposure and his political future. To truly understand the gravity of this surprise ruling and why it has unleashed such chaos, it is essential to grasp how extraordinarily rare this type of Supreme Court action is. Under normal circumstances, the court represents the pinnacle of transparency. Cases appear on public dockets where anyone can track them. Oral arguments are scheduled months in advance, allowing both sides time to prepare. Briefs are filed openly for journalists, academics, and the public to examine. Secrets are typically absent from Supreme Court proceedings. However, the court does possess the authority in exceptionally rare and narrowly defined situations to conduct proceedings entirely under seal. This power is reserved for moments when national security is at risk or when other extraordinary interests require complete silence. Historically, this authority has been used sparingly, generally limited to matters involving top secret, classified information, active intelligence operations, or circumstances where public disclosure could cause immediate and irreversible harm to the nation. The fact that the court invoked this power, in this case, he speaks volumes about the seriousness of the situation. According to the ruling released on December 7th, this sealed process began more than a year ago. It originated when a grand jury issued a subpoena demanding Trump's financial records, internal business communications, and documents related to what the opinion vaguely describes as matters of significant national concern. Because the subpoena was issued under seal, Trump was served while simultaneously being placed under a gag order. He was legally prohibited from revealing its existence to the public, his political supporters, or the press. His attorneys were bound by the same strict confidentiality requirements. Here is the twist. Legal experts analyzing the ruling immediately noted that its language strongly suggests this investigation is entirely separate from the classified documents case in Florida, separate from the January 6th prosecution in Washington, and separate from the Georgia election interference case. What this reveals is something far more serious. A completely independent legal front that had been operating beneath the surface the entire time, unnoticed by the public and largely unanticipated by Trump's political allies. This is not the first time the Supreme Court has ruled against Donald Trump. He has faced defeats before. But what makes this moment fundamentally different is the element of total surprise. In previous cases, Trump's legal team knew what was coming. They had time to prepare arguments, shape public messaging, and plan their next moves. This time, there was no warning. According to reporting, Trump's lead attorneys learned of the ruling not through standard court notifications, but through breaking news alerts. Within hours, panic set in. Lawyers scrambled to determine which documents were covered by the subpoena and how quickly compliance would be required. Sources described the atmosphere as chaotic, with urgent meetings taking place behind closed doors. And unlike past setbacks, this ruling leaves Trump with virtually no room to maneuver. The subpoena has now been litigated through every level of the federal judiciary. The Supreme Court's decision is final. There are no appeals left, no procedural delays available. The ruling sets a strict deadline of 72 hours for full compliance. The court also included a stark warning. Any failure to comply fully and in good faith could result in immediate contempt proceedings, with penalties that may include pretrial detention. This is language rarely seen in Supreme Court opinions, and it reflects a judiciary that has reached the end of its patience. Trump's usual strategy has been to attack, delay, and delegitimize. But this time, that playbook appears ineffective. There is no higher court to appeal to, no legal shield left to raise. The decision places him in a position where every possible option carries severe consequences. If Trump complies with the subpoena and turns over the demanded documents, he risks exposing entirely new layers of legal vulnerability. Whatever he fought for more than a year to keep hidden would immediately come under prosecutorial scrutiny. If, on the other hand, he refuses to comply, the consequences are swift and severe. Contempt proceedings would follow almost immediately, and the court has made clear that detention is not off the table. This creates a scenario with no safe exit. Compliance may deepen his legal jeopardy. Defiance could result in incarceration before any trial even begins. Delay, the strategy Trump has relied on for years, is no longer an option. The 72-hour deadline eliminates procedural maneuvering entirely. What makes this moment especially destabilizing for Trump's legal team is the scope of the subpoena itself. Prosecutors are not asking for a narrow set of records. They are demanding extensive financial documents spanning nearly a decade, internal business communications, and records involving foreign entities and foreign nationals. The breadth of these requests suggests investigators are not chasing a single incident, but attempting to map patterns of conduct over time. Sources familiar with the matter describe emergency meetings among Trump's attorneys as they attempt to determine where relevant documents are stored, who has control over them, and whether full compliance is even logistically possible within the time allowed. The challenge is not only legal, it is operational, technical, and existential. Reports indicate that Trump's reaction was immediate and volatile. He reportedly lashed out at his legal team, demanding answers that no one could provide. The secrecy of the process, which once shielded him from public scrutiny, has now turned into a strategic disaster. Because the proceedings were sealed, Trump could not rally supporters, fundraise off the conflict, or frame the narrative in advance. The ruling arrived fully formed, immune to spin. Within hours, Trump publicly attacked the ruling and the justices involved, signaling potential defiance. Legal analysts warn that such statements may significantly worsen his position. Publicly declaring resistance to a Supreme Court order provides prosecutors with direct evidence of intent, leaving little room to argue confusion or good faith disagreement. Former federal prosecutors have noted that this places Trump in one of the most precarious legal positions any former president has ever faced. The court has closed every door except compliance. The legal system has reached the point where patience has been exhausted. The broader implications extend far beyond Donald Trump himself. This ruling sends a powerful message about press